The Negotiator, alien visitor from another world. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott, and that's what Donald Trump is looking like. He's starting to look like an alien from another planet, a cyborg of some kind, some mechanical death-dealing machine that is simply changing the landscape not only of the United States but the world, and doing it faster than the news cycle can keep up. But, gentlemen, prior to the election, and as a way of sort of kind of sucking my thumb to comfort myself, facing the idea of another 4 years of Kamala Harris, I made the case as strongly as I could that the single great skill set that an executive, including the chief executive of the United States, really needs is the ability to negotiate. And that is what the individual does. That's why the presidency exists. You cannot conduct negotiations by boards or committees. You have to have somebody who is willing to be able to trade the cards. And of all the presidents that we've ever had in this country, I think we have had a few, not many, but a few presidents who had a strong sense of how business works and profit and loss and getting your value and all the rest. But we've never had anybody who wrote a book on how to negotiate and had that turn into a top seller. So, Steve, let's start with you. I know this is going to come as a great shock to many, especially our liberal friends who don't really fully understand how the world really works. But you were telling us on the Backstage show about a T-shirt that you saw reflecting some of the horror that the nation underwent just recently in our recent history. You want to tell us about that real quick? Then I'll ask you the question.
Yeah, it was a somber black T-shirt, and in bold white letters it said "Survivor." Global Trade War, February 3, 2025 to February 3, 2025.
Okay. So the left is talking about a global trade war because Donald Trump has said he's going to put tariffs on Canadian and Mexican goods. We'll just stick with those two for the time being, right? And this is going to start, then Canada's going to go back and forth with its counter tariffs and so on and so on and so on. And it turns out that the threat of tariffs was enough to get both Canada and Mexico to agree to deploy thousands of troops on their side of the border to protect their side of the border against fentanyl intrusion into the United States and other forms of illegal activity. So my point is, it didn't have to go to the trade war. The trade war lasted an hour before the negotiator got what he wanted, which was in the national interest of the United States of America. So the point I'm leading to here, Steve, is this. A negotiator understands that if you want $1 million, you start off by asking for $5 million. And you may end up getting $2 million or $3 million, but one is when you're going to walk away. When Donald Trump issues these tariffs or threats of tariffs, the left immediately assumes that this is what is going to happen. They are too far removed from the realities of the real world to understand that this is an opening position which is designed to produce a response. And so far, it hasn't been a negotiation. It's been, here's my initial offer, and it has been so intimidating. Yeah, it really has. And he has no actual power over what Canada and Mexico does, but he does have power over the biggest piggy bank in the world, and that's the American consumer market. So can you address this idea that the left is hyperventilating over what the negotiator is laying out as his initial position and how that is not necessarily the course that we're going to take in terms of the horrors of the trade war that we've just survived?
Yeah, we've seen it now with Greenland and with Panama too. We've got a problem. The Panama Canal is not just built with American blood. Tens of thousands died digging the Panama Canal over 100 years ago. But it's a strategic asset that we turned over to Panama 50 years ago with promises that Panama would run it. And Panama outsourced it to the Chinese, which maybe the Chinese should not have a strategic asset of ours in the Western Hemisphere. This strikes me as a bad idea. So Trump started talking about, we're going to retake the canal.
Right.
And all the usual heads exploded, which let's stick a pin in that thought for a moment. All the usual heads exploded, but earlier this week, I believe it was on Monday, Panama said, you know what, not only are we not going to renew the deal with the Chinese, but we're going to see if we can get out of it sooner. This is what Trump wanted. He
That's
didn't want to
right.
invade Panama. That's bad for business. And this is what Trump is all about. Is it good for business? Invading Panama would have been bad for business. Getting Panama to do the right thing, to uphold a treaty from the 1970s, that's a good thing. And we've got him on the path to doing that. Great. The Arctic is becoming a great power struggle, just like Central Asia was in the 1900s or the 1800s. They called it the Great Game for the control of the resources of Central Asia. Well, there's a new Great Game going on in Antarctica, which turns out to be resource rich like you wouldn't believe. And not only is Russia beating us there, but China's beating us
Not
there.
Antarctica, the Arctic.
Or the Arctic, excuse me.
Yeah,
I misspoke. The Arctic.
No
yeah.
worries.
Underneath the Arctic ice, all of these massive resources. And we need to be able to protect our access to that. And one way to do that is to have more bases in and around Greenland. Trump wanted those bases. So he started talking about annexing Greenland. We're going to buy Greenland. Well, he didn't want to buy Greenland, but Denmark finally conceded, I want to say on Sunday or Monday, so maybe you can have some more access to Greenland. Boom. He got what he wanted. Two great things are going on here. One, we're finally pursuing our national interests again on the world stage. This is a huge, huge change. The other is when Trump lays out these big, bold opening positions that nobody would ever say, we're going to buy Greenland, we're going to take the canal back. All of these things that just sound crazy off at the outset. It's number one, just his opening play. It's his $5 million play. Number two, it makes all the right heads explode. They go crazy. And every time they go crazy, and they just can't seem to help themselves, they help to discredit the opposing position. And that is part of the brilliance of what Trump is doing here.
That's what I wanted to follow up with you on, Scott, because the beauty of this really is that Donald Trump's negotiating power has been enormously magnified by the left. For example, let's just take the Panama Canal thing. Trump says, well, we may have to go down there and take that canal back, and if we have to take it by force, well, that's what the treaty says. The left has spent the last 8 years portraying this guy as this lunatic, dictator, fascist nut job. And the people, the president of Panama thinks, holy cow, this fascist lunatic nut job is talking about invading my country. I better give him everything he wants before he even asks a second time. If the left had not demonized him and turned him into this cartoon figure of could just do anything, could just start pushing the nuclear button any second, he has actually benefited because nobody's going to call his bluff because they're so terrified of what the left has made him into. If Donald Trump hadn't been so demonized by the left, he probably never could have led with what we may have to go down there and get that canal back. The people would have said, there's no way the United States is going to go to war with Panama. But the left has now made Trump into this monster that can do anything, and they continue to amplify this message on a daily basis.
And they will keep doing it because it benefits them. I mean, he's
right.
an attraction. He draws eyeballs to MSNBC or to whatever social media site or blog or whatever the left is doing. They have to talk about him all the time because he is all there is in their world. They have to be angry at someone. He's the perfect enemy. And they're making him stronger with every blow they think they're landing. They think they're going to disable him in some way. You know, it's anybody who's involved in business knows that negotiations are a process. And to think of it in common terms, if you're not involved in business, negotiations are kind of like, it's like a movie. There's conflict, there's drama, there are setbacks, there are, long shot, gamble it all or nothing efforts to get what you truly want. There is resetting the field basically by doing something extreme that makes somebody else react to what you're doing. It's all theater in a sense, and if you're a normal business person or a professional negotiator, you understand this and you remain unflappable through it all. You don't get alarmed at stuff like that.
Yeah.
If you're an amateur or a doofus or a journalist, but I repeat myself, you panic. at the slightest
Clutch
show
your
of
pearls
things.
and head for the fainting couch. Yeah.
Or some of the more cynical journalists actually understand what's going on, but they want you to panic. And so they're making it sound all, alarming to you when nobody really needs to be alarmed. And the media and these people who are screaming in the public square and social media, those people are like people in the theater who are shouting at the screen and don't realize that the script has already been written and the director knows where it's going and the hero has a plan. And so they're panicking and screaming and yelling stuff at the screen. Meanwhile, everything is going exactly as it should. And people in the negotiations understand this. You saw a difference between, I believe, I didn't read all the details of this, but Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, versus Justin Trudeau. Trudeau came across as kind of panicky and, it's like, hey, we're supposed to be the United States friends. Why are you treating us like enemies? Blah, blah, blah. Sheinbaum seemed a little more low-key in her approach at handling this and kept a cooler head, I think. We don't want 25% tariffs, even though Trump keeps saying we're going to get very rich by doing this. We don't want the
That's
tax.
part of the negotiating.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's part of the sales.
Yes. That's not what he wants. He wants 21 or 22,000 pounds of fentanyl to stop flooding across the Mexican border every year. He wants gang members to be detained on the other side of that border. He wants the country to be safe from external threats. We've got enough trouble with our own internal threats. We shouldn't have to constantly be on a war footing to defend ourselves against people crossing our borders. And he is dealing with ostensibly democratic forms of government in Canada and in Mexico. And he is dealing, I think, in a rational way and saying to them, look, this has to stop. You're responsible for controlling your border. We shouldn't have to police our entire border just to keep your people out of here. Here's what I'm going to do, and this is the path I'm going to pursue until you change your behavior. And that's what we're seeing time and time again.
And you mentioned that negotiation is a process. So for those of you who are watching the game closely and you have your program handy, you may notice that when Donald Trump got what he wanted both from Mexico and Canada, he did not say, therefore, I have canceled the sanctions. He says, I will postpone the sanctions for 30 days, which means that'll see whether you're serious about doing this or not. Okay, they're coming back in 30 days unless the man's a genius at this. He's absolutely genius. And this is creating in real time in front of all of our eyes, all of this winning is creating an upward spiral. It's like a supercell, like a thunderhead, where Trump's numbers, his approval numbers are going up and they're going up and they're accelerating because the man is acting. He's actually taking action. He's doing the things he said he was going to do. Conservatives couldn't be happier. Even people who are in the middle or people who may not like him personally are seeing this, what I'm calling Trump's popularity ratchet. For example, I think the number of people that want the border secured and illegal criminals evicted from the country is something like 88% of the American population. Wow. Donald Trump does not have an 88% approval rating, but the more Donald Trump does things that have those kind of approval ratings, the higher his numbers go. And the beautiful thing about this is the higher his numbers go, the more power he has as a negotiator. Because now our overseas partners or enemies or whatever the case may be perceive that he has the mandate and the confidence and the support. So yeah, I'm not sick of winning yet. I don't know if I'll ever be sick of winning, but I'll tell you one thing. I can actually see a place in the distance where I could be sick of this much winning. I just don't think I'm ever going to get there. For Steve Green and Scott Ott, I'm Bill Whittle. We'll see you next time right here on Right Angle.